The role of the EU and UK in addressing overlapping causes. The European Union, EU, has become a key player in global refugee protection, yet its response to displacement has often been fragmented and inconsistent. While EU institutions have implemented various policies and frameworks aimed at addressing displacement, they are not always sufficient to address the overlapping causes driving modern refugee movements. The EU's Common European Asylum System, CEAS, is designed to create a unified approach to asylum across member states, but the system has been widely criticised for its reliance on the Dublin Regulation, which requires asylum seekers to apply for asylum in the first EU country they enter. This regulation has disproportionately affected frontline states such as Greece, Italy, and Spain, which bear a much higher burden of asylum seekers compared to other EU countries. These countries, often already struggling with limited resources and economic instability, are ill-equipped to handle the rising numbers of refugees, leading to overcrowded and underfunded camps with poor living conditions. Moreover, the EU's approach to border security has become more restrictive in recent years, particularly in the context of the refugee crisis that began in 2015. While countries like Germany and Sweden initially adopted more inclusive policies, the growing backlash against refugees in some EU states led to a tightening of asylum procedures. Many countries, including Hungary and Poland, have implemented deterrent measures, such as building border fences and limiting asylum access, further exacerbating the challenges faced by displaced populations. The EU has also faced criticism for its externalization of refugee management. Through agreements such as the EU-Turkey deal and the EU-Libya deal, the EU has sought to prevent refugees from reaching European shores by outsourcing refugee processing to third countries. These deals have been controversial, as they have often resulted in refugees being returned to unsafe or unregulated conditions. For example, the EU-Turkey deal of 2016, which aimed to prevent irregular migration across the Aegean Sea, faced criticism for sending migrants back to Turkey, where their rights were not always fully protected. Similarly, the EU's collaboration with Libya to curb migrant flows from sub-Saharan Africa has led to refugees being sent to detention centres where they face violence, abuse, and exploitation. To effectively address the overlapping causes of displacement, the EU must adopt more comprehensive strategies that go beyond border control measures. This includes addressing the root causes of conflict and climate change through foreign policy, ensuring fair and equitable distribution of refugee responsibilities across member states, and creating flexible asylum systems that are responsive to the diverse needs of refugees. The UK has historically played a significant role in providing refuge to displaced individuals, but its approach to asylum has shifted significantly in recent years. As mentioned in earlier sections, the Nationality and Borders Act 2022 introduced more restrictive asylum policies that make it harder for refugees to claim asylum in the UK, particularly those arriving via irregular routes, such as across the English Channel. The Act is part of a broader trend in the UK of tightening border controls, a stance that reflects concerns over national security, economic strain, and public sentiment. However, the UK's response to displacement cannot be solely defined by its domestic asylum policies. The UK's role in international refugee protection is also shaped by its historical ties to former colonies, its involvement in global peacekeeping, and its participation in international frameworks such as the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR. The UK continues to resettle refugees through programs like the UK Resettlement Scheme, which prioritises individuals at the greatest risk, including survivors of conflict and human trafficking. However, as with the EU, the overall capacity of the UK to offer long-term solutions is limited, especially in the face of global displacement challenges exacerbated by conflicts and climate-related crises. One of the key areas where the UK can improve is in addressing the intersection of climate change and displacement. Many countries, particularly in Africa and South Asia, face environmental degradation such as flooding, desertification, and sea level rise, which combine with political instability to create long-term displacement. The UK's foreign policy has a role to play in helping to mitigate the effects of climate change in regions prone to displacement, as well as in supporting climate refugees through international frameworks that recognise environmental causes of migration. At the same time, the UK must continue to advocate for global solutions that address the interconnected drivers of displacement, including conflict, governance failure, and human rights violations. To address the complexities of modern displacement, it is imperative to rethink existing refugee frameworks and adopt new approaches that are more flexible, inclusive, and forward-looking. These approaches should consider the full spectrum of vulnerabilities that displaced people face, including not only conflict, but also economic instability, environmental degradation, persecution, and climate change. The EU and UK, as key players in the global refugee landscape, must take the lead in developing and implementing these new frameworks. For the EU, this means shifting away from restrictive border policies and externalization practices, and instead embracing a more cooperative and sustainable approach to refugee protection. This includes addressing the root causes of displacement through foreign policy, improving the distribution of asylum seekers among member states, and creating more responsive asylum systems that cater to the diverse needs of refugees. For the UK, it involves taking a more comprehensive approach that acknowledges the overlapping causes of displacement, particularly in the context of climate change and international conflict. The UK must continue to honour its international obligations, while also adopting policies that are more attuned to the changing nature of global displacement. Ultimately, addressing the overlapping causes of displacement and adopting new frameworks requires collaboration at the international level, innovative policy solutions, and a commitment to the principles of human dignity, solidarity, and protection for all displaced people, regardless of their background or the causes of their displacement. Only by working together can the EU, UK, and the global community ensure that refugees are afforded the protection and opportunities they need to rebuild their lives and contribute to the societies that welcome them.